Oh, do you remember? Hey, hey, the 1st of May. What is it? What is it? Hooray, hooray, the 1st of May. Outdoor begins today. Or, the more tame version, like hooray, hooray, the 1st of May. Outdoor loving begins today. Do you remember that?
I do. I think I heard the outdoor fucking
The
starts
explicit
today.
version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's witchcraft.
Hi, and welcome to a special Wheel of the Year episode of the Stoned Witches Hour. Today is May 1st, Beltane in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the third spring festival. Some people say it is the beginning of summer. I don't know about in New York. In Southern California, I would definitely say this is the very beginnings of summer.
This is the beginning of camping. Go camping for Beltane, and then it's on for the rest of the summer.
I'm your co-host, Layla.
I'm Chelle.
She's usually high, but
I am high. That's the problem. That's why we're doing. That's why this is flowing this way.
That's why it's flowing so nicely right downstream. Yeah, so I'm Layla, and today we're going to talk about the pagan festival of Beltane, May 1st, which is traditionally the beginning of summer. It's when, like Shell said, camping started, and we were ready to get outside and get our groove on most of the time. Dance around a bonfire, do the maypole.
You know, I think the most fun thing as far as like Beltane weekend activities, other than the whole going camping for the weekend and all that, doing flower crowns and doing the maypole. That it takes more skill than you think, first of all. You think that you're all agile and stuff until you like trip over somebody dancing around the maypole. And flower crowns, that's an art, man. Everybody
It
can't just pick
is.
that up.
But they're so beautiful when they're done. And I do remember many a Beltane celebration after we'd done the maypole dance, which usually devolved into complete chaos midway through.
Right?
But we would always look at the how the ribbons had woven on the maypole, and we would kind of see, you could see the perfectly beautiful pattern, and then you would see where chaos began and everything. The pattern devolved into just this bright, colorful
But then you
knot.
could see but then you'd see that pattern come back too.
You would. Sometimes it would pick right back up. It was kind of beautiful in a very chaos way.
Chaotic way. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is definitely much more to Beltane than that. The camping, the having fun, but some of the ritual aspects, that's where we should kind of hone in a little bit today.
We always celebrated new beginnings, new starts, not just fertility. I mean, I know this is definitely a big fertility and sex ritual because what's happening in nature is what we kind of reflect in our ritual. And animals are out there screwing their brains out. Animals are out there hooking up. They're all getting together. Babies are being born, new shoots, new flowers, new growth. And that energy doesn't have to be just sexual and pregnancy. It can be new energy and new growth anywhere in your life. And we try to represent that in ritual.
It could be planting the seed of an idea, planting the seed of an action, a goal, anything.
This,
I'm thinking of planting the seed in that whole sexual way. I meant planting the seed that way.
I gotcha. Because this is more like the growth part of it, like bursting, like all of it's. I guess that you're right. The sex part is kind of the planting the seed there, doing that for sure. All that sex energy. Also, one of the things I remember from some of our community rituals was a big emphasis on female divine energy and male divine energy. In more recent years, by that I mean like 20, 15 years ago, they incorporated a third group. Actually, it was more than 15 years ago. I can remember a third group unofficially, even back in the 90s. So we would
Yeah,
have
quite a long time ago.
we had like the men's mysteries, the women's mysteries, and then
And
we
then the
had
fools.
what was called the Fool's Mysteries. And children often joined the Fool's Mysteries, but anyone could, particularly if you didn't feel called to join the men's or the women's mysteries. And I also remember, even from when this particular community was started back in the 70s, They always allowed anyone to go. If you felt that you had masculine energy, you went to the men's mysteries. It didn't matter what your physical form was. If you were masculine and felt called to that, you went to the men's mysteries. If you felt feminine and felt you were a woman, you went to the women's mysteries. And they have always been very inclusive with that. I do remember there were years even when the May Queen was a man.
Mhm.
They were definitely ahead of their time in that. So we did have men's, women's, and fools mysteries, but they were very inclusive. And this time of year, that type of energy is very strong in everyone and kind of, flowing very freely through everything. Hence I guess the big emphasis on sexuality because of the joining and the blending of those energies.
But this is also a good time to do relationship spells, relationship rituals, love spells, love rituals. Not personally a big proponent of love spells, but if you are so inclined to do such things, this is as good a time as any. But, talking about the mysteries, one thing that I liked at the end, and this kind of segues into the May King and the May Queen, we did our own version of basically like fairy cakes. And that was kind of how we would choose the May King and the May Queen. What those cakes looked like varied from year to year, depending on who the creator of those cakes were. Fairy cakes are kind of yummy treats that we kind of use to, you can look at it as a couple different ways. Honor the fairies and the woodland spirits. We kind of used it as a mechanism to let fate decide, let the powers that be decide who was going to be chosen for that May King or May Queen. Almost like if the god and goddess themselves were using those cakes as a tool to make that selection, was kind of how we used it in the community that we were participating in.
Yeah, so basically every year, and it was different, like you said, it was a different treat every year. Some days, some years it was a savory cornbread muffin. Some years it was a brownie. Some years it was literally a cake or some type of cupcake. The treat varied from year to year, but they would bake something into it, something food safe. And everyone knew that there was going to be something small in these. So everyone was always warned that you had to break it open before you ate it. But in the men's mysteries and women's mysteries, they would bring these treats and into which something representative, a stone or a marked item would be baked in secretly into one of these cakes. And then, like you said, randomly everyone would pick a cake. And then at the same time, everyone would break it open. And the person who had that random item in their cake had been the one that was chosen by fate to be the May King, the May Queen, or the Fool for the year.
But in other, in different traditions, those fairy cakes were used to honor the actual fairies and woodland spirits.
Yeah, often the group that did hand out the cakes would, I know we did, would leave cakes in the woods for the fae
Yep.
and for the energies of the land. And I'm pretty sure most of the groups in that community did so.
Kind of like leaving out cookies and milk for Santa.
Always a good idea to leave offerings for the deities, for the fae, and for the energies of the land. It's always a good idea to say thank you or to give them a token to acknowledge that shared energy.
Wine was a big thing.
Wine, bread, and cheese
Yeah,
constantly. It was wine, bread, and cheese.
some of those spring wines that are coming out, dandelion wine. I don't know how much dandelion wine we've had at Beltane's over the years. It was kind of like the season of new libations. Just good stuff. And again, offering it off to the land as well.
Speaking of offering it to the land, it's a great time also to do an outdoor altar. We always had different places outside, a stone altar that you can build, or a piece of wood, or even just a spot in your garden, or a little patch in the woods that you found, and to plant fresh spring flowers that can grow there, or to bring flowers as an offering, or to bring different stones or leaves, or something that reminds you of summer and spring to that place. I know you've mentioned before that things don't necessarily have to have the perfect magical meaning to work if your intent is there. For me, one of my favorite flowers for Beltane is the forsythia. It's a beautiful reminder of spring because even before a lot of leaves are out, that bright yellow forsythia bush is blooming with flowers. so for me, it's an easy way to bring that freshness of summer, of spring, because you've got flowers, they're bright yellow, they remind you of sunshine. And I don't care what the actual magical meaning of forsythia is. My intent is to bring that sunshine, that flower energy to my altar, or to my ritual working. And it works just like that.
The other thing that is a Beltane tradition, this is also the first big outdoor fires of the year.
That's right. Traditionally in Ireland, they would light the two big fires on the hills of Tara, and everyone would drive all their cattle, all their sheep, their livestock between, even themselves, between these fires for fertility, to cleanse them and to bring fertility to them for the year. And then everyone would take some of that fire home and relight their hearth fires with it to share that energy amongst the community. And we would do that in our community. A lot of times we would do either between the fires, dance between fires some years, or some years we would do leaping over the fire, which traditionally would do the same thing. Leaping the fire would kind of mean that you would bring that Beltane fertile sexual energy into your life for the following year.
And kind of some of the other early Irish traditions involve them driving out the cattle into the summer pastures, which I guess it's kind of in the theory of like they keep them close to the barn and in that warm, kind of confined area during winter. And then as soon as spring breaks, they're kind of free to go off into those far off, vast summer pastures.
Yeah.
So that is also marked by the Irish for letting their cattle go out. They were doing their rituals to protect their cattle and their crops, and like you said, they'd have their stock walk between those bonfires as they were traveling off to their summer pastures.
It's a great way to, if you want to go between two little fires or even between two candles, doesn't have to be a full roaring bonfire if you're not lucky enough to live someplace where you can do that. Or even, two lit joints if you must walk between two lit joints, and you can get that same kind of, if the intent is there that you are cleansing yourself of, you're letting go of all that darkness of winter. This is the final spring festival. We're walking into summer, and you can shed all of that and walk into your summer sexy body, walk into, your summer self, your bright, your happy, sunshiny self. And whether that sexual life energy is to bring you relationships, sex, babies, whatever, or if it's to bring you new goals, new hobbies, new people, new energy, new business, new jobs, new whatever into your life, you can walk between those lit joints and picture that coming into your life. Shed the old, bring in the new.
Some Beltane practices were actually designed to ward off or appease fairies and prevent them from stealing things like dairy products.
Always a good idea to leave an offering to the Fae energies. Give them a little bit of wine, a little bit of beer.
They will mess with you.
Leave some flowers outside for them. Leave a little bit of food. Acknowledge their presence this time of year. It's a fun way to acknowledge, that kind of fun energy in your life.
I kind of laugh because people kind of forget that aspect about Beltane. But there are people that don't even remember that whole fairy tie-in. And it really is, if you kind of look at the roots of some of the different ritualistic things, they were kind of designed to appease the fairies, right down to the darn fairy cakes. They are called fairy cakes.
And the hills of Tara being possible she mounds or fairy mounds, and that's where they put their fires. It makes a lot of sense.
Never piss off a fairy, truly.
No, good idea. That's actually good life advice right there. Leave a nice bud out there. Leave a fresh bud from your harvest, something pretty, and just leave that for the Fae to bring good energy to your life for the year.
We've done that as well.
Look around you outside. It's all earth related. Look at the green grass. Look at the bright colors of flowers. Look at the bright blue skies. I hope you have bright blue skies.
I always think of yellow. I always think of yellow with Beltane. And you know why? Because of the dandelions and the daffodils.
And the forsythia.
Yeah, it's that yellow. It's almost like the yellow flowers are the first ones to come.
Oh my gosh, I forgot how much I love dandelions and how quick they are to pop up. I know they're a weed, but they're so great. You can make dandelion wine, you can eat the leaves. There's medicines I think you can make out of dandelions. I'll have to look that
Yeah,
up. But and they're so bright and happy and cheerful. I've always loved dandelions.
but green as well. Green is definitely, the grass is starting to grow, the trees are budding and the leaves are popping out. So definitely green is something that makes me at least think of Beltane color wise.
Now that you mention it, I always think of yellow as the goddess color, the bright, sunny goddess, and the green as Cernunnos, the god of the wood, the horned god, horny god of Beltane. That green man picture that you see all the time with like
Yep.
the
The oak leaf
flowers and the
face.
leaves.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So the deep green of the green man and the bright yellow of the goddess this time of year.
And but we've used pink candles, we've used green candles, we've used yellow candles, we've used purple candles, kind of anything really kind of that springy, light, bright feeling palette. You can look in all these books and it'll say, for Beltane, you have to use this color and you have to use this color. You know, do whatever rocks your boat, man. If you want to use a color that is not what the book says, use a color that's not what the book says. It's your intent.
Exactly. If you're a solitary or if you have a small group, this is a wonderful time of year to set up an outdoor altar or an indoor altar that honors nature. Bring the bring nature indoors. Try to reconnect with that as much as possible. Set up an altar with as many natural elements as you can find and do whatever reminds you of summer and growth, whatever reminds you of sexuality and new beginnings and honor that in the way that feels good to you.
Walk between two candles if that's what works for you. Walk between two candles.
Set some time and set up an altar with an incense that you enjoy, a candle that makes you happy, maybe a seashell or a small chalice of water, and your favorite stone that makes you think of summertime. Maybe it's a bright citrine, or maybe it's some sort of dark red carnelian that makes you think of the hot summer sun, whatever it happens to be. And then light yourself a joint and walk between two candles while you shed the dark part of the year finally, as you're fully embracing the light half of the year now that we've just had the equinox of Ostara. Beltane is the exact opposite of Samhain. And in Samhain, it's the dark half of the year, and we're close to the veil between the worlds is thinnest. This opposite point of Beltane, the veil between the worlds is thinnest as well. And there's a lot of, like you were saying, Fey activity. And, so walk between those candles, walk into summer, and maybe then leave an offering outside of a little bit of bud or a little bit of food or a little bit of wine or some type of drink that you enjoy, and give that to the earth and give that to the fairies.
I always looked at Samhain as kind of the veil is thin in the ancestral way, and Beltane kind of is the veil is thin in a spiritual creature way.
Oh, I love that. I really like that. Yeah, I see that.
It's almost like two different thinnings with two different, it's like going to two different parties with two different groups of friends. Totally the opposite, but still the same type of party, but with the opposite type of people.
So this is more of the sativa half of the year where you're kind of upbeat and happy and bubbly, and Samhain's more the indica, kind of into yourself, melt in the couch, stay as a homebody.
Kind of like, Samhain is where that veil is thin and you can connect with maybe loved ones or relatives or friends and family that have passed on. Whereas at Beltane, it's going to be more like fae folk and things of that nature, spirit animals, just not necessarily those familial spirits.
So maybe this is a good time of year to do a meditation or an introspection for yourself, where instead of trying to connect to ancestors, maybe you try to connect to the energies of the land where you live or the energies of the land where you like to do ritual. Or maybe you try to look for your spirit animal, or try to look for that younger self, or
Or go
maybe
have a conversation with a stream.
go. Yeah, I love that. Go have a conversation with nature itself. Go look for that. Shit, I forgot where I was going with this. So
Smoke a little more.
right? So instead of trying, like you said, instead of trying to connect with your ancestors, try and connect with the land, try and connect with, the energies around you a little bit more. Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that, Shell. So magical workings now, anything relating to prosperity, new beginnings, new relationships, having a child. If you want to start a pot garden, you can ask for that energy now. It's a great time for magical workings to do with. So anything to do with wealth, growth, sexual energy, this is a great time to do spell work related to that. Beltane is very special to me personally because I met my husband on Beltane and then I married him.
I remember.
You remember because you brought him.
Yeah, blame me, blame me.
I do. We absolutely blame you and your husband. There are several people that had their hand in this. This is the story that makes me believe in love at first sight. And I may or may not put this in, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So I met my husband one Beltane, and I hand fasted with him the very next Beltane. So what happened was this gentleman that worked with very best friend's husband at the same company, and Chelle and her husband at the time were both pagan, and we were both in the same pagan community. And everyone was getting ready to go to the Beltane weekend camping celebration. And my darling husband, I don't know what I'll call him. What do we call him? Mr. Laylla.
Mr. Laylla. I love that.
So my darling husband, Mr. Laylla.
Sir Laylla.
Sir Laylla. Lord Laylla. He is a lord. He's a Scottish lord.
So we'll call him Lord Laylla.
Lord Laylla. No, I like Mr. Laylla. So of Laylla, like the Handmaid's Tale would be of Laylla. I don't know. We'll just go with Mr. Laylla. So Mr. Laylla has heard about this Beltane pagan celebration and really would like to come along. And he's begging Mr. Chelle, at the time, Mr. Chelle, if he can go.
And I didn't want him to go. Can I just put that out there? I was so salty about having to bring him. I was angry.
Well, first of all, new people typically were not allowed to come to Beltane as their first ritual. Typically, they had to come to something different because some people got in their minds that Beltane was a big sex fest. And okay, it kind of was, but that wasn't their first introduction.
It wasn't
to paganism.
The focus.
It was not the focus. And it was also considered a big working, and it wasn't something that new people typically were invited to. But he was insistent. And he eventually got his way and was able to come.
I was so busy. I was just like, fine, you can go.
You guys were all busy and you didn't make it until later in the day after the May Queen had already been chosen. I had been camping there since the night before and had done this thanking ritual because I had released all this baggage back in Samhain, and I was thankful now at Beltane because I was in a great place. So the May Queen had been given the sword representing the land, and she brought it to me and asked me if I would be her knight and presented me with the sword. And I, of course, accepted. And someone saw this happen and gave me a leather belt so that I could wear this sword around my waist. At that same time, one of our mutual friends came up to me and said, Laylla, I saw you in a dream last night. And in this dream, you were wearing a dress. And she hands me this gorgeous black velvet dress, just very medieval and long and flowing and just simply stunning. And she's like, I don't know why, but you have to wear this dress. And I'm like, of course. So I take the sword, the leather belt, and this gorgeous velvet dress, and I go into a tent. I change into it. And as I'm belting this sword around my waist, I'm like, fuck, I look fantastic. And I walk out of the tent feeling all badass and cool.
And here I come rolling up.
Here you and your husband and my future husband come all rolling up the path. And I bow down in a really deep curtsy, my face right to the ground. I'm grinning ear to ear. And I look right up into the eyes of Mr. Laylla and I say, "My lord." And I fucking fell in love right then and there. I felt like I had known him forever. A shock went through my whole body. And I spent the rest of the day trying to get this man to pay attention to me. Granted, it wasn't very difficult. He was,
Yeah,
he,
no, it wasn't.
he was just
No.
as smitten as I. And later, when asked when he fell in love with me, he recounted that same story from the opposite side, seeing me come out of the tent and curtsy. And later that night, as we're sitting around the bonfire that we had just jumped over, I'm standing there. He's sitting, leaning up against my legs. My hand is in his hair. And I knew then that I was going to be with this man forever. And it was the weirdest fucking feeling. And we've been married for what, 22 years now? So
Here we still are.
here we are. And I'm still very blissfully happy and very much in love. And that was a Beltane love story. So
Uh,
yeah.
I
Thank
remember
you,
that
by
like
the
I
way.
remember
Thank you
that
so
like it was
much.
yesterday. I remember that like it was yesterday.
I'm so glad you broke all the rules and disregarded your cranky self and brought him. Thank you.
You know, part of it was I was trying not to be a rule breaker at that particular point, and the other
What?
part of it, I know, right? I know,
That's
right?
so unlike you.
And the other part of it was I knew you were there already having fun and we were running late and I just wanted to get there and he was going to make me later. And finally I was just like, fine. And it worked
Yeah,
out. It was the greatest wait.
it was. It was worth every second of that wait. I really appreciate it. So to this day, I absolutely love that part about Beltane. I do remember being the May Queen though, and that was actually a difficult year for me. The energy of carrying for that particular pagan group, the May King and the May Queen had a symbolic duty to represent the community for the entire year and to carry the energy of the community for that year. And it was actually somewhat of a magical burden. You could feel that energy. It brought lessons. And I remember that being a very challenging, changing, good year for me when I was May Queen, which was a couple years before I met my husband. And I don't think people expect that when they're in the party moment. You know, you're celebrating women. We're doing stuff to celebrate that feminine energy in all of us. And, you know, we're dancing, you know, we're connecting, we're doing some sort of craft or event to kind of bring us all together and to feel that divine feminine. And then we pass these cakes around. And I don't think people in that moment realize that you really need to be prepared for the changes that are going to happen. And I don't think people understand when they happily grab a cake what's going to happen magically to them for that year as they carry this energy of community that really does transform you.
I myself have never been a May Queen. So I kind of have no frame of reference to that.
You have, however, in this particular community, held other positions of transformative power, such as you have been the staff holder and the chalice holder multiple times. And those were things that were not chosen by chance, so, although sometimes they were. And you have gotten it by chance as well as by intentional giving to honor things that you had done for that community. You had been given the honor of carrying these tools for periods of time until you were ready to pass them on. And that itself also has transformative energy. And Beltane was sometimes a time when people chose, particularly the feminine chalice, to transfer.
You know, I think the staff was a big thing.
When we were in community, the staff was considered the community symbol.
Right. And I actually ended up getting the staff, geez, either 3 or 4 different times. Like that thing kept coming back to me. It was
Yeah, I
like a
think
bad penny.
I know once at least, maybe twice, it was random. It was chance chosen
And
by
then
fate. And
there was
then
some
at
intentional.
least two were
Yes.
intentional and given to you in recognition for work that you had done.
So I kind of had that. It circled back to me over and over. And that was a burden as well. It was almost like the only way I can equate it is like when the Lady of the Lake is holding the sword temporarily until someone comes back and gets it.
So it's a blessing and a burden.
It is because it's this this deep, heavy, magical item that holds a magical purpose for a very large group of people with 100 people's different energy and intent into it, and you're the guy holding it. It's definitely, I don't want to, I never looked at it as a burden. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. It was definitely more of a deep, heavy, magical responsibility. But I never looked at it as a burden other than transporting it. Because let me tell you, that staff was a bitch to transport.
And then to get back to the masculine and feminine of it, the staff, which can be a very masculine phallic symbol, was the symbol of the community for decades until our coven at the time, Circle Amarat, decided to bring in to balance that with a feminine energy. And we had the actual owner, the keeper of the land where the community typically did ritual, was a clay worker. And he created this absolutely gorgeous double-handled drinking chalice for the community. And it was imbued, oh, I'm getting chills. It was imbued with all that intent, all that energy, and it was energized by the feminine energy and community and presented to community to balance that.
Didn't he use clay from the land
He
as well
did.
to make it?
Not entirely, because it was the wrong consistency to entirely do the chalice, but he did do
Partially.
we call it a chalice, but it's more of an ancient drinking chalice in that it looks like a very large bowl. Think of a bowl that's too big for your two hands to cup, with a nice curved handle on either side. So a good sized bowl, but it was considered a communal drinking chalice. And so this community chalice was created partially from clay from the land where the community usually had their rituals. And so now the community was in balance. We had the staff to represent the masculine and the chalice to represent the feminine, and those were often passed from to different people, again, either by chance, such as how we chose the May King and Queen, or with intent for different reasons, to people within the community. And that felt really good, and I believe we presented that on Beltane.
Yeah, actually, Beltane 2000 we did.
Beltane 2000. Wow. So happy anniversary, 22nd anniversary to
Oh my God,
the
can you believe that?
chalice.
Can you believe that that was almost a quarter century ago?
Same time as my hand fasting. So yes, I can believe
Right?
it, but wild, totally wild.
Right? And I remember that chalice, that community chalice, had a bee built into the bottom of it.
I wasn't going to say that. I was going to leave that as like the little secret community thing. But yeah, there was a
Oh,
beautiful little bee at the bottom to kind of also, no, we don't, that was just in my own head. I don't even know why I thought that. you know, but yeah, I loved that too, that there was a little bee at the bottom. So, as you would drink that, not that anyone would probably do that now, but as you would drink the wine and pass the chalice around, there was that little bee that would peek out to represent that divine feminine. I loved that.
and now because of the way the world has turned, everybody has their own drinking apparatus.
But yeah, to symbolically even drink from it is beautiful. And to have those items that have such history in community is so important, I think. And to have that balance, this time of year is all about that. It's just, I love it. It's a great time. And not just because of, the divine sexual aspect of it, but the going camping, the energy of the earth and getting out there and just being in community again. And we would do indoor rituals right after Samhain.
This was the first back outdoors period for
And
us.
it always felt so, so good. So I love
Even
that.
if we did have a dusting of snow on Beltane
Even
morning.
if we did, no matter what the weather, we were all happy to get out and camp, even in New York, Northeast. Oh yeah, so I saw this blog. It's called Hearth and Hedge on Blogspot.
Uh-huh.
The author Alex mentioned that they associated holidays with the time of day, and I kind of really loved this. They said for them that Ostara is the sunrise, and I know we talked about either getting up at sunrise or whenever you get up can be sunrise for that day and celebrating the spring. And they said that Mabon would be the sunset, and so Beltane is kind of like that midday, and I love that that representation, because it is kind of that feeling that you get. It's late morning, the sun's out, and that energy is all fresh and new and flowing. And I kind of liked how they had mentioned, they kind of likened the holidays to different times of day. It makes a lot of sense.
That's cool. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that.
We definitely are in the light half of the year, so that kind of is an easy representation way to visualize it. So it's easy to remember that, because if we're in mid-morning, that's during the day. So you can remember that we're in the light half of the year right now. So I kind of like that. It's fun.
The other thing about Beltane, we are midway to the summer solstice, which, hoorah.
Yeah, yay. Another great way to one more thing before we go is food is a great way to celebrate Beltane, and cooking. Make yourself some fresh bread, make yourself some fairy cakes, and you can definitely incorporate canna butter into that just a little bit. You don't want to get too crazy, but incorporating a little bit of canna butter into your cooking and having those fairy cakes is a nice way to celebrate. Have some with someone that you love and leave one outside for the fae.
And edible flowers. And we're not talking about weed at this point. Edible flowers, dandelion wine. That is a nice Beltane tradition that I'm used to. So get yourself some dandelion wine, chug it down, celebrate.
Dandelion wine and any edible flowers, including cannabis flowers. So drink your dandelion wine and have a little bit of fairy cakes made with just a tiny bit of canna butter, and enjoy your Beltane.
Happy Beltane.
Happy Beltane. Blessed be. Thank you for joining us on this Wheel of the Year episode for Beltane 2022 with the Stoned Witches Hour. Enjoy your holiday and be safe and
Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate.